Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the second lecture this Wednesday on June 17th. We're going to continue and we're going to finish up our first unit by looking at the final reading in this unit, which was a chapter from Bell Hooks's book Outlaw Culture titled Love as the Practice of Freedom. We're going to continue to talk about the relation of self to other, uh, what Hooks thinks love is, and how love can be a transformative element in socially reforming a lot of the systems that we have in our society. If you haven't done so already, please go to the lecture notes for this lecture and listen to the song that is at the top of these notes here. And then just think about how the song is related to the lecture that I'm going to be giving today. So, we're talking about a philosopher, a political activist, feminist, author. Her name is Bell Hooks. She's American. She was born in 1952, and she has written a lot on the intersections of race, gender, and capitalism. Some of her famous ideas are this idea that having a community of people is required for educational purposes, for educating people. And she's also known for popularizing this love ethic that we're going to talk today to try to instigate political and social change, because that's what she's really concerned about, being a black academic woman in the 20th and 21st centuries. So let me give you some background kind of on Hooks herself, where she's coming from, and then we'll talk about the piece more specifically. So Bell Hooks is an American black woman. She's an academic and she's been writing for many, many years now. She's writing from the perspective of someone who has studied the history of racism in the United States and has experienced elements of racism both as a student and in her own teaching practice and political activity. One of the basic assumptions that she's going to make in this piece, as she's talking about love, is that the way current United States society is structured is based on systems of domination, like imperialism, sexism, racism, and classism. She's going to say, look, our colonial history, the colonial history of the United States, has had some profound effects on the way society has been structured. It's been responsible for the distribution of private property that we see today, the distribution of wealth. It's played a role in the development and sustainment of slavery, and of racism and classism. So she's just kind of presume this. She's not going to offer that much evidence for it. But I think we can probably take on this assumption without doing a lot of heavy lifting here. I think she's probably right about this stuff. One of the main points she's going to be making in this piece, though, is she's seeing a lot of people that are fighting for political and social change, but she's going to say that our current political motivations are broadly somewhat misguided. She says that we are right to be worried about the material concerns of the disadvantaged, like black people in the United States. Um, but our primary motivations shouldn't be trying to fix the material disadvantages that minorities face and other oppressed groups, but we should try to dig deeper and get to the root of the problem, which is we should first strive to instill a love ethic in the American people, and then we should use that love ethic um, as a catalyst for political and social change. She doesn't think that we're going to be able to lift people out of poverty, to eradicate racism, to get rid of these oppressive and domineering structures without first instilling a love ethic in the inhabitants of the United States. So let's just get right into this piece here. So what Hooks does first is she kind of traces the history of racism and political action and reform in the United States, and how political activity and reform uh, has run up against these uh, dominating structures that we're talking about and institutions. She recognizes that a lot of important political work has been done by activists opposing one system of domination, but oftentimes what happens is that in opposing one system of domination, people accidentally, indirectly, or directly support some other system of domination. The examples that she mentions in this piece are Malcolm X, and what she says about Malcolm X is that while he was fighting against uh, the dominating institutions and systems of racism in this country, what he was indirectly supporting was a system of domination of sexism. He wasn't paying enough attention to feminist analyses and wasn't doing enough feminist work in how he was trying to fight against racism. She also mentions some white political activists in that do this as well, namely white feminists who support feminism, but they don't really show any support for eradicating racism, or they indirectly support structures that uh, legitimize racism and keep racism going. So, really, what she's trying to call attention to here in the first few pages of this piece is that if we're going to dismantle these systems of domination, what we need to do is we need to engage in intersectional analyses. We can't just talk about racism. We can't just talk about sexism as if they're not related. We need to look at how they interact and how they're related together. And in order to truly dismantle one system, we need to dismantle all of the interlocking, interdependent oppressive systems that mutually kind of support one another. She notes that one of the reasons why political change has been uh, so slow in the United States is that many people get involved in political movements to help themselves, to help their own race, to help their own group of people. That is, a lot of these people are self interested. But she doesn't think that we can really provide long term solutions um, to the economic and social problems that we have unless we're engaged in intersectional analysis and unless we actually care and express love for other groups uh, and other communities. She says, until we are all able to accept the interlocking, interdependent nature of systems of domination and recognize specific ways each system is maintained, we will continue to act in ways that undermine our individual quest for freedom and collective liberation struggle. So it's not enough just to be fighting for one cause or another, for one particular group. If we're going to eradicate these systems, if we're going to dismantle these dominating institutions and systems that we have, what we need to do is we need to be motivated from a space of love for all people and a willingness to try to liberate even those um, that have disagreed with us in the past, even our political opponents, even people with whom we don't exactly see eye to eye. One of the ways, or probably the only way, that Hooks thinks that we're going to be able to do this, that we're going to be able to get equality for the sexes and the genders and the races, is that we need to be motivated by a love ethic. That is, we can't try to dismantle these systems from a place of hate or violence. What we need to do is we need to be motivated for love for other people. And this is one of the reasons why she thinks that the civil rights movement was so successful, is that MLK, what he did was he really talked a lot about love and the need for loving others and the need for nonviolence. And Hooks is really going to support that. She recognizes that there are definitely some positive things that came out of the Black Power movement, because it kind of was a call to revolution. When we're talking about dismantling systems of oppression and dominance and hate and violence, we can't just engage in simple reform. Reforming the system isn't going to eradicate the abysmal social conditions that we see today. What we need a revolution, a new way of thought. In this way, the Black Power movement, she says, was good and it helped progress civil rights for Black people. But what was bad about the Black Power movement, she thought, was that it kind of pushed love to the wayside and it called for violence to establish political freedom for oppressed groups. She says that the misogyny that was inherent in a lot of what Malcolm X was saying, weakened the movement and it kind of widened the rift between the races. However, its revolutionary message was good insofar as it strengthened the movement and it got people to realize that simply reforming the system wouldn't work. She thinks that the reason we haven't seen a lot of change in regards to social justice is that the death of these influential Black political leaders like Malcolm X and MLK caused much despair in Black communities and it kind of stunted racial progress in the US. What we need to do then, according to Hooks, um, is we need to understand the violence that has been done to us uh, through these systems and try to understand how they operate. She then goes on to talk about how these uh, systems of domination affect us and what love's role is in understanding and trying to ameliorate the conditions that we see today. Again, she says that the current culture of the United States is based on domination, and she's going to point to things like colonialism, capitalism, physical violence towards minorities. All of these things are kind of built into how the US operates and treats its own people, and she says that this is specifically anti love. My personal opinion is that I think she's right about this. I think that violence is not going to be the way to solve the social and political problems that we have, because I personally believe that violence is like a circle or it's kind of like a cycle. What happens when a group inflicts violence on another group is that violence gets internalized in a certain way, and it can often cause the group of victims to lash back out at their oppressors, which even more violence, which just kind of perpetuates this cycle of violence between groups. So I do agree with Hooks that if we're going to fix these problems and if we're going to actually generate real social change, we need to act from a place of love for other people and not trying to use violence to attain our ends. One of the reasons why it's been so difficult for Americans to establish a love ethic in the past and now is because Hooks says that many Americans do not love themselves or others because they don't really know what love is. They've been fed kind of a false idea of what love is. One of the reasons why people don't know what love is people are often shunned for talking about love, right? And we saw this uh, during the hippie movement in the 60s and the 70s, the free love movement, right? Whenever people would talk about those that were nonviolent, that were engaging for peace, that were calling for an end to the Vietnam War, uh, a lot of people would just say, that's just lovey-dovey stuff. That doesn't mean anything. That doesn't do anything. You're not really offering us any solutions. They would kind of shun those people that were talking about love. So culturally, uh, love has kind of been pushed to the wayside in the United States in its relation to politics. One of the reasons why Americans don't really know what love is again because we've been fed an incorrect conception of love, according to Hooks. Because the current economic system that we have in the United States is capitalism, uh, how we understand love is kind of filtered through how we understand capitalism. A lot of people treat love that like it is a relationship based on exchange. Like I give something to you, I love you, so then you love me in return. Or, I do the dishes for you, so then you do the laundry for me in the future. We treat love in this country a lot of times like a business deal, and we keep tally and we keep score. Uh, but Hook says this isn't what love is. Love is not an exchange of goods or products. It doesn't keep score like that. Similarly, love is not just some ooey gooey feeling that you feel deep down in your heart, or the butterflies you get when you see someone cute. That's not love. Similarly, love is not a political contract with the state, right? Marriage is not love. Just because you signed a contract doesn't mean that you love another person, or that you are engaged in love with them. This is not what love is. I'm going to come back to what she says love, in fact, is at the end of this lecture, but just kind of keep those ideas in your mind. Hooks thinks that if we're going to establish racial equality and equality for all people, um, what we need to do as members of oppressed groups, and what Black people need to do more specifically, she says, is they need to process the grief and the pain and the anguish that they have experienced because of these systems of domination. And this kind of goes back to what Jung was saying, right? With integrating the shadow into our personality. I think what she's calling for here is she's calling us to look at those parts of ourselves and those repressed desires and ideas and experiences and process them actually and confront them, not to push them to the wayside and try to forget about them. She's going to say that these systems of domination have caused a lot of people to internalize the view that they are inadequate, or they're subhuman, or they're scary, or they're second class citizens, or something like that. What she's calling for oppressed peoples to do is to try to distance themselves from that conception that they have of themselves. You know, she wants people to realize that they are not what the dominant culture historically have said that they are. They are not reducible to certain categories that the dominant culture have placed on them, and they are not the monster historically that some people have made them out to be. If we're going to overcome these systems of domination, we need at least three things, according to Hooks. We need proper education on how these systems of domination operate. That is, we must learn how these systems work, the kinds of consequences that they have on people, the roles that we play in legitimizing and sustaining these systems. We also need awareness. Each person needs to come to an awareness of their own place in society. Each person must learn where they are in society, how we got here historically, how much power we have individually because of our social positions, and whether or not we can use our power for meaningful change, and what we can do personally in order to try to deconstruct these harmful systems. And finally, she says that we also need collective communication and action among people. We can't just try to go out and solve this all by ourselves. What we need to do to create long lasting social change is we need to come together to create loving communities and work on solutions together. And we must engage in collective political action, right? They say Rome wasn't built in a day. Well, social change isn't going to occur in a day either. And it's not going to occur on account of just one person. It's going to require us all to do something about that and kind of reflect on what we can do differently in our lives to establish equality for others. Now I'm going to talk about what she says love is more specifically. That is the love ethic that we should rely on and we should try to instill in ourselves and others in order to get this political change off the ground. What love is for Hooks is service to others. Love is not a business deal. Love is not dominating another person. Love is being able and willing and actually serving another person. Acts of service strengthen our ability to feel empathy with the other, to empathy with other people that are suffering, and service to others gives us insight to ourselves and to society and to other people that we didn't have before. Actually interacting with people and helping people get done what they want done um, is a great way of strengthening our bonds with them. Love is also supporting another person's interests and projects. It's not taking your projects and interests as uh, superior, or it doesn't take your projects and interests to take priority over another's. What love is trying in the ways that you can to support what another person wants to do, to support uh, and strengthen their ability to basically get done what they want to get done. But most importantly, for Hooks, love is commitment to ending oppression for all. That is why this chapter is called Love is the Practice of Freedom. Hooks thinks that only through love, only by serving other people, by supporting their interests, by listening to them and engaging with them, can we actually establish freedom for ourselves and freedom for other people. Violence is anti-freedom because violence necessarily constricts people's freedom in some way. What we need to do is we need to internalize a commitment to free everybody in our community from the oppressive and dominating structures that they're a part of. It's not good enough just to try to free black people or Jewish people or women. We need to try to end oppression for everyone because it is only when we are all equally free that we share in true freedom. As long as another social group is being oppressed or is having their freedom stifled, our freedom is stifled as well. So that's basically Hooks on love, what it means to love another person, what she thinks the starting point is for an ethic that's going to produce lasting political and social change. It needs to start from love. It needs to start from being able to serve others, being able to put yourself uh, on the line for other people. What all of this amounts to is that in our preparation for doing ethics and applying ethical theories to various ethical issues, what Hooks and Arigari are going to say is that it's not enough to just devise rules for acting morally. We need to start from a place of recognizing the humanity of other people and loving that humanity and wanting to make it so that people can be all they can be in this life and not to stifle their own creative freedom and not to put them under our thumb or dominate them in any way. That, I think, is what Arigari and Hooks are getting at here in their discussions of contact with the other. So that about sums it up. If you have any questions or concerns, don't be afraid to shoot me an email. We're going to be moving on to a new unit on Monday, and this reading is a pretty tough one, guys. So give yourself a lot of time to do that. If you're having any questions or concerns or need clarification about the reading, again, ask me questions. I'm a resource. Use me as a resource. I definitely want to help y'all, and I want you to succeed and learn things in this class. But until then, I will see you on Monday. Have a great rest of your week. Bye.